Hi everyone, Kate here with a very special video to celebrate finally hitting 10,000 subscribers. Yay! Now I've been on YouTube like 10 years, so that's really not that impressive by YouTube standards, but I'm happy about it. So I asked my Patreons what they wanted to see as a special video to celebrate, and they voted to see my top 10 list of resources that I use for my videos, so like books and magazines and things. So that is what we're doing today. Get it? 10 resources, 10,000 subscribers. It's a theme. So I've come up with a list of 10 of my favorite, they're mostly books. I think there's a couple magazines on here as well. I will link them all in the description below. I think, pretty sure most of them, if not all of them, are available for free in digital format. So you should be able to actually read them for yourselves if you so wish. I do have print copies of maybe about half the things on this list, but I should probably mention that this is not necessarily the list of the best historical resources of all time or anything. These are just a few of my favorites and some of the ones that I use most frequently. I do use a lot of different sources for my videos, so I actually had a hard time narrowing it down to just 10. There's definitely a whole bunch of things that I haven't talked about. Maybe when I hit 100,000, I'll do 100 books. Would anybody want to sit through that? My guess is no. So these books are just some of my favorites and some of the ones that I use most frequently. Just my opinion. This video is also not scripted, as I'm sure you can tell by now. A lot of times I do at least partially script my videos because I have a tendency to babble about nothing for ages. But I'm celebrating a milestone and I couldn't be bothered writing a script. I got some basic point form notes, but apologies. Okay, before I ramble on anymore, let's just jump right into the video. So the first thing on my list is a book that I've been using actually fairly frequently lately, and that is Health and Beauty Hints from 1910. This is one of my favorite Edwardian era beauty books. It's also very popular. It tends to win a lot of my Patreon polls. That's how my video topics get decided. I come up with a bunch of interesting articles and then people vote on what they want to see. And the ones from Health and Beauty Hints nearly always win the polls. If there's an article on a poll from that book, 9 times out of 10 it wins. I really like this book for making videos, partly because it's already divided into nice little sections that make great video topics with titles and everything. A lot of times in some of these Victorian and Edwardian era beauty books, it's just like a big long chapter and you really have to go in and try to figure out how can I turn this into a video. Whereas with Health and Beauty Hints, it's already nicely formatted. It also has a lot of good advice, this book. There are the usual mercury-based remedies and some of that stuff, so it's not all good, but it does have a fair amount of advice that is actually helpful, useful, interesting, not just from a historical point of view, but also something that could actually be still used today. Which is nice. I do try to come up with things that are actually useful rather than just shock value, Victorians used lead. Like, you know, I mean, they did, but there's more to it than that. As the title would suggest, this book also focuses a lot on being healthy rather than just beauty topics. Good health is seen as an important factor in good looks and is actually given more prominence in the book than things like lotions and potions and all those kinds of things. Which I quite like. I quite like that emphasis on physical health rather than just superficial looks. So that one gets a big thumbs up for me. There will definitely be more videos coming in the near future out of that book. So the next thing on my list is 1,000 Ways to Please a Husband. I know, it's quite the title. This is is a book from 1917, and it's actually mostly a cookbook, but there is a lot of other information in it, specifically decorating information and entertaining ideas. This is a book I use a lot for some of my holiday themed videos. I actually did buy, oh, you can't see it. There's a historical print copy that I bought up top there because I really like this book. It's utterly charming. Perhaps a bit unrealistic, but charming. I mostly use this one for holiday themed videos. I think I used it in one of my Christmas videos, and I used it in my Halloween video. Great decorating ideas, great party inspiration ideas about, decorations and favors and some of the activities that would have been done at parties. If you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. It really is. It's charming. I can't think of any other word for it other than charming. So the next thing on my list is the Every Woman's Encyclopedia. This is actually several volumes of an encyclopedia, circa 1910 to 1912. I don't think they have an exact date on them. I mostly use these for their beauty articles, but if you're interested in this time period, I highly recommend reading these. They contain an absolute wealth of knowledge on all kinds of topics. We have the usual domestic topics, so we have, cooking, cleaning, fashion, hair care, skincare, all that kind of good stuff. And then it also contains a fair amount of other information, which is not totally unheard of for publications from this time, but they certainly contain a lot more non-domestic topics than is covered in a lot of other publications. So we have things on farming, we have careers for women, we have medical advice, sort of first aid, nursing, that sort of thing. I think there's even some botany, and I know there's farming. History at the time. Like, I know the whole thing is history now, but history as told back in history. Anyways, if you have any interest in this time period, sort of the 1910s time period, highly recommend giving these a read. They contain all kinds of absolute gems. Next, we have The Ugly Girl Papers from 1874, which wins the award for Best Beauty Book Title ever. In my opinion, anyway. I love this book. This is a pretty typical Victorian-era beauty book. I mostly like this one because it's amusing. It does have some good and bad advice. It's the usual mix. None of these books are going to be right about everything. But they're also not usually wrong about everything either. They tend to be a blend. This one has some pretty good recipes. They're definitely aimed at women making them at home, so they tend to be a little easier to follow than, say, something in a pharmaceutical book, and they also tend to make a more reasonable quantity of product if you're just making it for one person. I love the title though. I had to include that one just for the title. Next, we have the first formula book on my list, and that is the Era Formulary? Formulary. Okay. Is that a word? Formulary? I guess it is. Doesn't sound like a word, but anyway, Formulary, which is 5,000 formulas for druggists from 1893. Now, this was aimed at pharmacists making products for their pharmacies. So it's going to have quite a wide range of products, a lot of medicines and remedies from the time, but it also has a lot of skincare and hair care and various beauty product recipes. So we're going to have cold creams, perfumes, hair oils, lip balms, all that sort of good stuff. There are definitely a number of questionable recipes in this book, but there are enough good ones to make it worth a flip through. Keep in mind, a lot of these old pharmacy books, they're making quantities of products that were meant for sale, so they make fairly large batches. So in order to convert them into a usable form, if you want to try any of these recipes, you really do have to do a lot of math. There's also a lot of math involved in turning the various weights and measures into something that you can use with modern equipment. A lot of them are either pharmacy-specific measurements or just measurements we don't really use much anymore. So I always have to do quite a bit of math before I make my videos. So if you're not into math, I love math. I have a degree in mathematics, but if you're not into math, just stick around. I'll do the math for you. Okay, moving on. Okay, continuing on with the formula book theme, the next thing on my list is Pharmaceutical Formulas from 1902, which is a book of pharmaceutical formulas from 1902. Pretty self-explanatory. I like this particular book because it provides more details than some other publications. A lot of the other ones just give the recipes, and they don't really give much of an indication of how it was meant to be used. This book has a nice amount of description about the products, as well as a description about some of the recipes. However, the recipes in this book are not exactly beginner-friendly. There are a lot of short forms used. The measurements are not clearly given. There's a lot of translation that has to go on. It's not impossible for somebody new to making historical recipes, but I probably wouldn't recommend it as the first thing you try. It is a good book, however, to get an idea of how these products are actually made, because they have fairly good descriptions of the making process, as well as how they were used. So if you're interested in that, I highly recommend giving it a read, or if you're just interested in seeing the types of ingredients that were used. As I said, if you want to actually use this book for making things, it's doable. It just requires a fair bit of translation. I can't quite remember which recipes I've tried out of this book. I've definitely tried a couple. The only one that's springing to mind is that bloom of Nignon. Nignon? Is that how you say it? Nignon powder. I did that one not that long ago. That was fun. That was sort of a nice, I think it was a scented powder. Can't quite remember. I don't know. I made a lot of powders over the years. For a slightly more modern formula book, we have the Druggists Circular Formula book, which is from 1920. So this is a bit more modern than some of the other publications I mentioned. Modern 1920. I gotta be the only one who thinks, ooh, 20s, modern. Okay. With this book being a little later, you do start to see a lot more modern influences creeping in, specifically the use of petroleum products. There's a lot of products that use, mineral oil or petroleum jelly and that sort of thing. This was for economic reasons. It was a fairly inexpensive product, and it also didn't go rancid, so it greatly increased the shelf life of these products, which was very good for the pharmacist. I would argue not quite so good for the consumer, as these things are, tend to clog pores and are not the best, but that's really the reason why, is that they were cheap and had a long shelf life, so not a lot of perishable products on the shelves. However, there are still a number of good recipes that don't use, petroleum products or artificial scents and that sort of thing. Specifically, I can't remember. I can never remember exactly where all these recipes that I've tried have come from off the top of my head. I think I made an effervescence bath powder from this book. I quite like that one. It was all fizzy. I don't know if I've ever made anything else. I think I have. I think I've made some sort of skin cream from this book as well, but definitely worth a read if you're looking for an insight into sort of 1920s beauty products. This is the early 1920s, so you're seeing some makeup, but you're not seeing as much as later books. But okay, I gotta hold up the paper for this next one so I get the name right. The next one is Banta's Advice to Ladies Concerning Beauty. I don't know, I can never remember that. I don't know why, but Banta's Advice to Ladies Concerning Beauty from 1878. So this is another Victorian era beauty book. This one's a little different than some of the other ones on my list because it focuses a lot more on recipes rather than general advice. Also, as it was written for ladies, not pharmacists, these tend to be a lot more manageable quantities, as well as easier to follow. If you're not into math, this is a good book to start with, because there's a lot less conversion required for these recipes than would be typical with, say, a pharmaceutical formula book. It also gives fairly detailed instructions about how to concoct these, because as I said, this book is aimed more at ladies making their own products, rather than somebody who knows what they're doing. There are definitely some interesting skincare recipes in this book, although I would perhaps avoid the lead-based eyebrow dye. As with all these books, be careful what you try. They're not all safe. I do a lot of research and searching to make sure that the recipes that I do use are the good ones. Not the horribly toxic, dangerous, poisonous, burn your skin off ones. We don't do those ones on this channel. Not intentionally, anyway. I once made a headache cologne, which never made it to this channel. That whole forehead was so red. That one never got posted for obvious reasons. I don't even remember what book that was out of, but that was pretty bad. In general, that doesn't happen though. I do a lot of research before I concoct anything. So the next one on my list is a bit of a general one rather than a specific publication, and that is issues of Photoplay Magazine, specifically from the early 1930s. These magazines are full of great articles featuring all kinds of interesting tips and tricks, specifically with the Hollywood theme to them. It's supposed to be what the stars did. Whether or not they actually use these, it's kind of hard to say, but they're very interesting to read, and a lot of the tips are fairly simple and doable. Again, this is being aimed at just, the everyday woman rather than professionals or anything like that. So I would love to do more of these articles in the future, but my Patreons never seem to vote for them. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the only one that likes these articles. They never seem to be popular, but I have one or two on the list that are coming in the near future, and I've definitely done at least a couple in the past, but if you want to see more, please consider becoming a Patreon member. I'm kidding. No pressure. Don't have to. I understand. So the last thing on my list, I think we'll do... I actually have 3 more things on my list because apparently I can't count. But I think for the last one, I'll pick My Lady's Dressing Room from 1892. I have a physical copy behind me. It is definitely one of my favorites. Now, this book was actually written by a French baroness, which has then been translated and adapted for use by American women. I should probably state that I'm not American. I think a lot of people think I am. I'm actually Canadian, but... Anyway, it was adapted for use in America. This book contains a lot of information intended to help the user retain their charm, grace, and beauty. So it has a lot of information on a wide range of beauty topics. We have skincare, hair care, setting up an ideal dressing room, fashion advice, all that sort of good stuff. It does have a few simple recipes as well, although it's predominantly focused on giving advice, mostly to an upper-class audience. I like to read a variety of books aimed at different classes, aimed at sort of middle class. There's not many things that were written for the poorer classes, but definitely at least middle and upper classes, just to get a more rounded view of things. This book definitely falls into the upper class category. Definitely some amusing articles in it, and I would highly recommend giving it a read if you're interested in that sort of thing. Just in case you're curious, the 2 that are on this list that haven't quite made the cut are the Hills Manual, which is a sort of a writing manual, but also has a lot about etiquette. And I used it for a book on the language of flowers once. And the other one says anything by Carolyn French Benton, because I love her. I've read nearly all the books she published. I think there's one that I haven't read yet, but I've read everything else. They are fabulous. I omitted that one just because I haven't used her stuff much to actually make videos with. I tried to keep this mostly about sources I've actually used. I think I used her maybe for a Christmas video, but I really want to do more with some of her books in the future because she is fabulous. Those are mostly food, housekeeping, more domestic focused books rather than a beauty focus. So there will be videos one day though. Okay, well that is the end of my list. I have been talking for nearly an hour. This will definitely be edited down, but thank you guys so much for sticking around for however long you've been here, whether it's been a day or 10 years. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Well, as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye! This video is made possible through the generous support of my Patreon members. Thank you. And you may notice my background's a bit different. I'm currently in the process of redoing my room and things have changed around quite a bit. So, new backdrop. Doesn't need to be the first thing you say in the video. It's like, wow, look at Probably doesn't even look that great. Work in progress. Okay, let's try this again. So this is another Victorian era beauty book from the Victorian era, which is what I just said. I always feel like I complain about being tired when I'm filming, but it's because I'm always tired when I'm filming. Okay. Okay, so the first book on my list is one that I've been using a lot recently, and that is Health and Beauty Hints from 1910. 10! Last week finally hit 10,000 subscribers. It's only taken me like 10 years, but we made it. Yeah, that doesn't bother me at all. No, it's fine. No feelings of inadequacy there. This may get a little babbly, rambly. All the things that happen, which is why I normally script my videos. I've been talking for 5 minutes and I haven't said anything.